Welcome everybody. So good to have you here. Can we welcome everyone online right now? Can we welcome everyone in Masterton right now? Hope you guys are having a great morning. As you can see, it looks a little bit different here. We're sitting on seats. Welcome. This is our new series launch, Heart to Heart. We're going to be discussing relationships. We're going to be looking at parenting, family dynamics, a whole bunch of different things. And today, Anna and I are going to be attempting to preach side by side, which we've never done before. And hopefully that goes really well. Just so you know, Anna and I have had our 25th wedding anniversary this year, which is awesome. And we reckon we'll probably keep going. You know, it seems to be going good so far. Let's keep at it. Let's keep at it. Just so you know, fun fact, we started going out, and 3 months later we got engaged, and 3 months after that we actually got married. So we actually had our 6-month going out anniversary on our honeymoon, which I don't recommend to anybody else, especially not our kids if you're watching today. I never recommend that. After 4 years, we had our first child, and 2 years ago, we had our last child. And you can take that, our last child. The last one. That's it.
We actually have been really looking forward to sharing with you today, and we've had fun writing our message because we've been doing it together but also individually. So fun little things appeared on our script. So if I say something random, it's because Chris has written it in there for me to share. Hey, we recognise that today we are talking about marriage, and it might be a topic that could be a little bit painful for you, or a lot painful. Perhaps your marriage didn't go the way that you planned it to, or perhaps you're in a difficult time, or maybe your spouse is no longer here with you, and we want to recognise that right at the front, that this might be challenging, but our prayer is that you will receive something from God today. Perhaps it's something that you can apply to other relationships that you have that are significant in your world. And we also recognize that there are people here who are not even thinking about marriage. Perhaps you're a 14-year-old teenager and you're like, marriage is way off, that is not on my radar. Well, one day you might find someone special, so perhaps this will be helpful for you.
I remember as a young kid, we're going to dive straight into this. I remember as a young kid, the first time I ever read the book Song of Songs. And I didn't even know it was in the Bible. And I just recall, I was sitting at the back of church. I don't know why I wasn't with my parents. Bad things happen when you're not with your parents. I was at the back of church, and I was with another kid, and he was bored. And so he said, we should do something fun. Now, those days we didn't have phones. You didn't have the internet. All we had on hand was a Bible or a hymn book. So he reached for the Bible, and I'm thinking, why would this be entertaining? And he got me to look up Bible verses. I'd never heard of Song of Songs. I didn't know what was in there. And I don't know exactly, can't remember exactly what he got me to read, but it probably was something along the lines of this. This is Song of Songs 7, 6 to 8. Oh, how beautiful you are. How pleasing, my love. How full of delights. You are slender like a palm tree. And your breasts are like a cluster of fruit. And I said, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit. We haven't put that verse up on screen. I don't want anyone distracted right now. But can I say, when I read that, I was like, what the heck is this doing in the Bible? I was shocked. Is this a Christian church? And then I thought, do my parents know this book is in here? And then I'm thinking, did anyone see me read this right now? And lastly, why don't we preach from this book more often? We should. I might be interested in church. So many questions. But Song of Songs is a very different book. It's a very different book. It's not a book that we analyze like other books. Like the clue is in the title. The Hebrews had this way of saying that something was the ultimate. If he was the King of Kings, he's the ultimate king. If it's the Holy of Holies, there is no place holier. So if it's the Song of Songs, they're saying this is the ultimate song. So what was the theme? The theme was love. It's the ultimate song. It's the theme of love. And in this book, it's a random collection of poems. There's no really great structure. There's two people, two lovers, they've lost each other, they're on the hunt, they're pursuing, they're searching each other. And that's how the poetry goes. Then suddenly they find each other, things get a bit saucy, you get verses like that, and then they've lost each other again, and they're on the search again. It almost seems random.
Yeah, it really is the reoccurring theme in this book, that love is constantly pursuing the other person. It's chasing. It's recognizing that they want to be with that person. They want to learn more about them, discover more about them. The promise of the joy of being together, the thrill of finding each other to keep that love going. Before dating, it's one of the fun things about preaching together, huh? Before dating, the pursuit is real. You're eager to find that way of getting alone time with that person, to get to know them, to find out what their dislikes, what their likes are. To pursue them is something that's so beautiful in that dating time.
I remember the first girl I was really interested in, and I was going to ring her up on the phone. Like as I was saying, in those days we didn't have texting. You had to have a phone call, right? So I was going to ring her up the phone. So I spent ages trying to work out how this conversation was going to go so I could keep it going as long as possible. I had questions. I had all sorts of things lined up. I rung her, and I missed my first cue. I forgot all my questions. The phone call lasted for 60 seconds. It was a disaster. But then I remember one of my first real conversations with Anna. She came to our church that Sunday night. We got talking. I couldn't believe the depth of the conversation and how quickly we got there. And being the chivalrous man I am, I said, I should walk you to your car. That's what I should do. Walked her to her car. But I was blown away at how interested Anna seemed in me. And I was pursuing her, but she seemed to be pursuing me. And I remember that night was so, if I could say that myself. Yeah, I remember that night, I closed the door, the car drove off, and I just said in my head, God, if that's the woman you want me to marry, just let me know. I'm all in. But what is this? Like, we can get lost in that initial stages where we pursue someone. We're excited by this. Why does this have to drift in a long-term relationship? We can easily let it slide. It becomes the background, not the foreground anymore. We get distracted with other things. So to have a strong, vibrant, alive marriage, we believe one key thing to do, and this is the title of today's message, is to embrace this, a pursuit that never ends, the pursuit of each other.
Yeah. I remember that night that we caught up at church, and it was one of our first conversations, and for those of you that know me, I'm a bit of a straight shooter. I say what I think, and I'm pretty sure the introduction into our conversation went along the lines of, do you find it hard that you're not married? Like, all your best friends are married and you're going on tour next year with your band and you're the only one not married. That must be so hard. I would find that so hard. And that is how I wooed my husband. But thankfully, it didn't put him off. And thankfully, God saw that I was part of that solution so that he didn't get to go touring on his own. So I'm grateful for that. Hey, we think that we've got a great marriage. But it's not without challenges, it's not without miscommunications, it's not without misunderstanding. But what I love about what we've got is that we continue to pursue each other even after 25 years. And I feel like that's been a trademark of our marriage, that we pursue each other, we pursue a great marriage, but we also pursue God. And we place God in that place, in the foundation of our marriage and in our everyday. As married couples, we need to make sure that we keep pursuing each other. And a marriage always grows in one direction or another. It drifts. It naturally drifts. It is fluid. It keeps moving and it keeps growing. And so our role is to make sure that it drifts in the right direction. Because if we allow our marriage just to move in any old direction, it often ends up in a place where you don't want it to go and you never thought you'd go.
Here is the truth, is our marriages, they're actually a reflection of the real pursuit of love. And the real pursuit of love is that God pursues us. And that's the greatest pursuit there is. And our marriages are like a shadow of that. They're a reflection of that. In Romans 5, it says this, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. In the book of Ephesians, Paul is writing and he's comparing our marriages to how Christ is with the church. And he says this in Ephesians 5, husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness.
Early in our marriage, we got to spend some time with a couple who had been married a lot longer than us. They had 3 children. And really, when I look back on it, I think they actually took us under their wing to help encourage us in the early stages of our marriage. And we really wanted to shape how we did married life and a family around how they were doing life. And the husband said this thing to us. You know, this is like 23 years on, and it has stayed with us. This is what he said, something along these lines. A relationship is always fluid. It's always changing, always remolding. It's not like a formula where you plug in the right components and get the same results each time. And that really stood out to us, that we wanted to make sure that we were encouraging our marriage in the right direction, that we actually had the power to be able to do that, instead of just going with wherever it floated. So today we wanted to share 5 points with you that we believe that will help you set the course of your marriage in the right direction. It's like grabbing hold of a couple of tools and put them into the toolbox. And some of you will have many tools in your toolbox, and you've got a fabulous marriage. For others, you might be starting the journey of marriage, or maybe you've just had a child and so it looks a little different. So we're hoping that these tools will help you today.
Point number 1 is this: sing their song. The book of Songs is all about two people pursuing each other. But to pursue your husband, your wife, or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it is, you really need to know what their song is. There's a song that I have on hand that whenever I play it, it always changes the atmosphere. And her face lights up, she draws close, she comes on in. Now, we're not making a point that you have to learn to literally sing a song. Although for some people that may be helpful. Right? For others, that won't be helpful at all. But I'm just you be the decider of that one. What I'm saying is you have to learn what it is that actually draws your spouse in. What are those things that you do, that you say? There are things that we do that will draw our spouse in.
Yeah, when we're saying, sing their song, it's about knowing what that other person loves, what draws them in, what grabs their attention, what creates connection for them and between you two. It could be as simple as spending time together, having a meaningful conversation. Being deliberate is important, creating a moment. It can be helpful to remember what it was that drew you to that person in the first place. That can be a really great indicator of how to create that togetherness. What drew you close together when you started to get to know each other? For us, it was conversation, but it wasn't just any kind of conversation, as you can probably tell. It was meaningful conversation. We loved to get beneath the surface and talk about what really matters, what God's doing in our life, what kind of future we want to have, what's the call of God on our lives. And so it was really important for us to speak about those things early on. And so 25 years on, that's something that we pursue because we know that that is key to connection for us. We love going out and having a meal together and talking about our favorite things, the things that mean a lot to us. When our kids were young, we really couldn't afford to go out and have anything other than a coffee. And so if we wanted to create a special moment, we would cook a nice dinner, we would put the kids to bed, get dressed up, and have a candlelit dinner together and then dance together. And it was just so beautiful, and it really didn't cost too much. But what spoke volumes is that we made time and effort for each other, and we don't want to ever see that stop.
I really look forward to Fridays. It's our same day off that we have together. And so every Friday we'll do something together. Like it might just be as simple as going for a walk. We might go to a cafe. But inevitably, in those moments, we start to talk and the conversation starts to happen. We start to unravel from everything that we're wrapped up with in our normal everyday living. And we start to intertwine again, share same thoughts. Our hearts start to get excited with each other, hearing each other. That's really the thing I look forward to.
Yeah. And it might seem really simple, but I feel like one of the most common things I end up talking to people about who've been married from 2 years through to 40 years, when I start to ask them about their marriage, especially if they're just finding that the spark is fading. And when I ask, how often do you date? Oh, yeah, we don't really kind of plan dates. So this might seem like a simple tool, but it's something that's so powerful that you never want to let go of and just assume that you're okay without it. So one of the best ways to achieve this is through regular dates. Creating moments where you get to sing their song, where you get to draw that other person into a deeper place than where you usually would dwell as a couple. And I hope it's okay to say this. We don't want to fall into the trap of, oh, we're just best friends. You know, if you've fallen into that place, then something's gone astray. Because a relationship, a marriage, is meant to be more than just being best friends. Yes, we do marry our best friends because they're the person that's closest to us.
Not all of our best friends.
Not all of our. We do not want to marry all of our best friends.
Clarifying that for people.
Not all. Choose the best friend.
Carry on as you were.
But I think so often, you know, people talk about, oh, they're my best friend. That's really important. It means that there's a depth in your connection. But the reason you got married to your best friend is because you want to be so much more. You want to have that romance. You want to have that connection. And it's something that we need to fight for regardless of where we are in our relationship. So it's important to plan regular dates, to lock in a day, lock in a time. And the beautiful thing about that is that it's showing the other person, I'm pursuing you. Spending time with you matters, which is exciting.
Point number 2. We need to lighten their load. What do we mean by this? Well, inevitably in relationships, we make mistakes. And as a male, I often do this. I'll make a mistake, and I would not be able to tell from how I look. But I carry it around like a weight. And I realize I've done something wrong, and it can really weigh me down. The other way that you can experience it is when you've made a mistake, you don't know what it is, but suddenly now you've got the silent treatment. And even if you ask the question, what did I do wrong? The answer is normally similar. Nothing. No, you've done nothing. And you know, of course, you've done something, but you have no idea what it is. My family growing up, we were actually terrible at this. Or you could say we're amazing at this, you know. We didn't speak openly about the things that disappointed us. We weren't able to be honest about those things. Yet you could tell there was a weight in the house. And it didn't just affect the married couple. Everyone felt it. You know, we would feel this weight and we wouldn't know what it is.
Yeah. So what does it mean when we say lighten their load? It means to keep a short account, to offer forgiveness and to do it quickly, not to hold a grudge. You know, we might feel like we've been hurt, and our instinct is to withdraw our attention. Or maybe it is to speak very loudly about what it is that they have done to hurt us and cause us pain. But a better approach is to communicate clearly, to let your spouse know what they have done to hurt you and make it clear that you don't want it to happen again. Then offering forgiveness straight away. It is hard if you hold on to that unforgiveness. It can stand in the way of a beautiful relationship.
I remember the first home meal I had with Anna's family, and we were there, and as I said, my family wasn't that upfront with being honest, and I remember that first meal, someone raised an issue. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm a guest, and you're raising it in front of me, and it's suddenly everyone's talking about this, and I'm freaking out now. I'm not used to this. I'm uncomfortable. Is this family falling apart? I'm wondering, you know, and then I realized they were actually confronting issues. Then they were forgiving, and the relationships were mended, and I'm like, this is a way better way to live.
Yeah. I don't know if we were really good at this at the beginning of our marriage. Like, I thought if I spoke strongly and loudly to get my point across, then that was an excellent way to communicate. But for Chris, he would just pull back and just disappear. And I think my response probably caused him to do that more. So this has been a work in progress for us. We've both had to change. And you'll find in your relationship with your spouse or someone else, there's always room for improvement, right? When it comes to communication and when it comes to conflict. To communicate appropriately when we're hurting is so important. We can feel raw, it can feel hard, but it's so important to respect that person and to be respectful in our approach. We need to raise inappropriate behavior. We don't want to just become quiet and just accept it, but to call out the change. Because a marriage is a long time. And so especially at the beginning, to call out what it is that causes pain or causes you to pull back. It's important to communicate these things. To lighten their load means to forgive them of their wrong actions and to keep that short account. For me to hold on to a long list of all the things that Chris has done in 25 years, all the things that he's done to hurt me, that would be so unfair. And I know, and I'm sure some of you know this, that when it gets to that point that it's bubbling up, it comes out and it looks really ugly because you're pulling up those things from the past, from last year, last week, instead of just talking about what's happening here and now. I would hate for Chris to hold on to a list of all the bad things that I have ever done. It would feel like he would be using that against me. But can I say that if there are reoccurring actions that are causing grief and hurt in your marriage, then get some help. Get some support. We've reached out at various times and received counseling or guidance from different people, and it's been so helpful. So if you're getting stuck, then reach out beyond the two of you to get support from others. When we forgive, we actually lighten our load too, because at the same time, we're not carrying unforgiveness. So as we lighten their load, it's lightening our load as well. It makes it easier to draw closer because we don't have this huge pile of unforgiveness sitting between us. But I do also want to say this, that we're not saying that it's okay to be treated badly, to be abused in any way, to be treated inappropriately. That's not okay. And so that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the niggles and the parts that are hard in a relationship. As you come together in unity, it takes time and it takes work.
If I could be honest, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. This is the part I've probably improved the most in our relationship. So I'm getting some good, best improved player awards, I think, on this one. I remember I would stew over something for a week or so, and the thing that changed me was Anna's grace towards me. That I remember her saying to me, "You know, this attitude you've got here, I'll give you 2 more days of that attitude, and then it needs to change." Just so full of grace.
So gracious.
But I remember it dawned on me one day. I remember something else that happened. I don't know what it was. I thought, oh, this will be another week of just stewing in a bad home environment. And I thought, what am I doing this for? And then something dawned on me. And it kind of came almost like a poem. But it dawned on me. It was like, if I carry on this way, I never give you any grace, it will all be in vain. It will all be in vain. But if I could let go and I could forgive you wholeheartedly, then everything would be changed. I thought, I need to do that. I'm the only one who can. If unforgiveness is causing a weight around your life, you need to learn how to forgive.
Yeah, it's powerful. The next point is this: speak their language. Speak love in a way that they can understand. Now, many of you would have heard the 5 love languages, and they are powerful when you understand your spouse and how to communicate love. And those 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. It's so powerful when you know what it is that speaks your partner, your spouse's love language.
I remember I couldn't understand why I go up to Anna sometimes, give her a hug, and it felt like she's like, oh yeah, enough of this, I've got things to do. You know, I'm like, have you lost your affection towards me? You know, are we drifting? Is this the end now? Are we falling apart? But then she used to have a business, and she needed her accounts done. It was on Excel sheets. It's boring work, but I kind of like, I can do that kind of stuff. I'd beaver away on the computer doing these Excel sheets, and suddenly she's all over me. You know, I'm like, what? Anna, I'm just doing, this is Excel here, you know what I mean? You know, and it dawned on us suddenly, acts of service is one of her number 1 love languages. So when I'm doing something for her, it's like I'm screaming, I love you, you know?
It's true.
We moved the computer into the bedroom after that. That wasn't on the, that's not on the notes, I don't know where that came from. Carry on, Anna.
Moving on. One of my favorite things that I love that Chris does for me is every morning he makes me a coffee. And it's a small thing, but every day it's just a reminder. And I don't know why, because he's done it for such a long time. Every time he brings a coffee to me, wherever I am in the house, it's like, oh, in my mind I'm thinking, oh, you love me. This is so lovely. And sometimes I do the real test of love. I'm like, did you make yourself a coffee this morning? He goes, no, I didn't make a coffee. And I'm like, oh, you really love me. Because you made me a coffee, not as an afterthought, but you thought of me and made me a coffee. And for some reason, it's just that small thing that means so much.
We're moving the coffee machine into the bedroom as well. Got a very, very full bedroom, let's just say that.
These points are definitely not in our
No,
notes.
I'm obviously tired. Just get focused.
What I find quite useful, you can see I'm the serious one in the relationship. What I find useful sometimes is to ask Chris a couple of questions. Every now and then I have to pull these questions out, and I find it useful because it helps me to know, have I hit the mark or not? And these are the two questions. What can I do to show you that I love you today? And it can kind of vary what he says. And the other one is, when do you most feel loved by me? And if you're going to ask that kind of question of your spouse, it's just helpful to lean in and just listen. What do they say? Because you'll find that there is a common theme in what they say, and that can help you work out what their main love language is.
There's been a few times in our relationship where I've really felt like I'm not hitting the mark. And I remember one of the first times that happened, and I'm coming to God, to be honest, quite desperate. I'm like, God, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, how do I move this thing forward? Anna's obviously unhappy. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I felt God speak to me and say, you need to listen to what she says. And I thought, okay. Have you ever thought that sometimes the voice of God sounds very much similar to the voice of your spouse? I remember that first time I was journaling. So every time she had a, you could call it a complaint, maybe a strong comment, strong suggestion, I would write them down. And I suddenly realized there's a common theme. This is actually not that hard. All I need to do is follow this stuff and things are going to go way better. Can I just tell you, to be great at speaking their language, the first thing you need to be good at is listening to them. Listening.
Great. Good point. The next point is to let them shine. Let your spouse shine. We want to bring the best out in each other. We want to be each other's best supporters, to cover their weak spots, and we want to help them be great parents as well. When our kids were younger, we played a lot of football together as a family. We'd kick a ball around at the turf or in the lounge. I think most of the time it was just to tire these three boys out. And I loved that Chris had convinced them, I don't know how, but he'd convinced them that I was the best soccer player in the family. And so they really wanted me on their team. And it was awesome because I felt like I was a bit of a star. It's not the way anymore, but I just love that, it's almost this little picture that shows the value and the importance of speaking something really significant about someone into your family. And I love the way that, it was a fun little thing, a little joke that Chris and I had, that I was the best soccer player in the family, and the boys believed it. But even to this day, with our children, Chris will talk about me in such a beautiful way to our boys. And they see me also through their own eyes, but also through their dad's eyes. And that really helps me to have that connection with the boys. It helps build that trust and respect. Because I know for our boys, they think, wow, if dad thinks that about mum, she is awesome. And Chris helps to highlight the beautiful things that he sees in me, which is really valuable.
Anna's also really perceptive at seeing what the boys need. So she'll often give me a heads up. Hey, Chris, if you could spend some one-on-one time with this son, it would make the world of difference. And I value that so much because it allows me to actually win as a dad. So together we work as a team. But also, can I just say, we need to speak encouragement to the other person. Call out the greatness in the other person. Revelations 12:10 describes the devil as the accuser. And one of his best strategies, he gets in our heads. He'll speak negativity when we fail. He'll point that out, many times. He'll try and get us living without any hope. So what is our role as a spouse? We need to speak the word of God. We need to speak encouragement. We need to get into that mind. Speak what God is saying. I want to read that verse again in Ephesians I read earlier, this time in a different translation. Ephesians 5. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. God's clearly saying our words make a difference. Our words. Speak God's word into your spouse's mind. Speak positivity. How they change your heart, how they change God's heart, their strengths. Let them know it. Let them understand it.
It's important to speak positively about our spouse to other people as well. You know, we want to be lifting them up in conversation when we're talking to other people as well. We don't want to have a negative attitude that sneaks in and then it spills out of our mouth when we're talking to other people, especially those people we're really familiar with, like close family members, best friends. It's really important that we speak greatness into those conversations about the person that we're married to. I like to kind of see it, I've got this little phrase that's in my head, and it kind of helps keep a check actually on my attitude, and it's this: what you see is what you will get. So what do I mean by this? What I see, like within Chris, what I see within my husband, what I focus on, what I dwell on, what my opinion is of him, how I see him making decisions, how I see him conduct himself as a dad. Like, this is really important because it really enforces what it is that I will see in the future. So if I see greatness in him, and I take delight in the things I see in him, I see the beautiful characteristics that are within him that God has placed there. And if I think on them and I speak about them, that is what I'm going to see. It helps to reinforce what it is that I see in him. And the opposite can happen. Like if I think negatively, I speak negatively, then that is what I'm looking for. It's like you're honing in on those things. It's like, oh, there it is again. Oh, there's the evidence of that attitude. There's the evidence that you don't really care, that you neglect me. So whatever you focus on is what you're going to get in the now and in the future as well. So our attitude really does drive our actions, and how we view our spouse will either build a wall or bring closeness. Now, it doesn't mean that we ignore inappropriate behavior. We have to speak to that, and that is important. We don't want to ignore it and allow it just to sit in our relationship. And that goes with any relationship that we have that is meaningful. We don't want inappropriate behavior to be present. We need to speak to it in an appropriate way. And we need to call out the gold in our spouse and those other significant people as well, to let them grow and to let them shine.
We've got to our last point. If the band could come now, that would be amazing. Point number 5, I want to lead them towards God. I've taken a few weddings in my time, and this verse in Ecclesiastes is often spoken at a wedding. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. The thought here is that God is the third strand, and it's a great image. But one thing I don't like about this image is that it almost indicates that all 3 strands carry the same amount of weight. This is never the case. It's never the case in life. It's never the case in our marriage. God can do things that we can't do. He does the impossible, and that's what he does. God is a shepherd that guides us. He's the one who leads us beside still waters and refreshes our souls. He's the one that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he leads us safely out the other side. He's the one that even when we're facing our enemies, he prepares a banquet for us where we have more than enough.
When Chris asked me to marry him, it really was a significant time. Like, we'd only been dating for a few months, and so it really was special, and I couldn't wait to tell everyone. The day after he proposed, we were going to be meeting with our parents and going out for dinner to celebrate, which was going to be really great. But that afternoon, Chris rang me, and I knew something was wrong. He said, hey, I don't actually want to tell anyone that we are engaged, that we're going to get married. I want us to keep it quiet. We can tell our parents, but that's about it. And that was quite devastating. As a young woman, you dream of getting engaged and you can't wait, and you want the man of your dreams to shout it from the rooftops that he has found himself a gorgeous wife. And that wasn't the case. Chris wanted it to be quiet and didn't want to tell people about it. I knew something was up. But it really was a challenging time when we stepped into our engagement.
I don't exactly know all that happened at that time, but reflecting back now, there was many things that stood out to me. One thing was this: I felt incredible fear. I had a fear that we wouldn't make it, that we didn't have what it took to make it. I thought, there's no way I can guarantee our marriage will last. The truth is, none of us can guarantee that at all. We actually can't guarantee that. But at the time, God brought a verse of scripture. We said this verse at our wedding. Colossians 1:16 says this: for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. And at that stage, I felt like God said, and your marriage is created. Went on to say, all things have been created through him and for him. So our marriages are not just created for us, they're created for him. And in verse 17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So God was speaking to me clearly. The greatest thing that I can do as a husband is bring myself to God and lead my wife to God. Because we can't do this. We actually can't. But we need God. He's got to pull us through. He said he's capable of doing it. You know, maybe you've had trials with your spouse. Maybe you can see them making choices that you are devastated by. We can't control our spouse. All we can do is bring ourselves to God and lead as much as we can our spouse to God. And God has the ability to do what none of us can do.
Yeah, we want to encourage the other person to believe what God is saying about them, to call out the God that sits inside of them. When they're struggling, we want to be a support to them. It's so important that we encourage our spouse to talk to God. We can give great advice, especially us wives. We give excellent advice. But we want to draw them back to God, back to their Creator. And so we want to be led like that, right? But we also, as the wife, want to be leading and encouraging our husband back to the Lord, to seek Him, to seek His face. It's important that not only do we seek each other, but we pursue God together.
If there's one practical tip you could take in this area, is to pray for your spouse. Pray for them. Pray for them regularly. You don't have to pray amazing prayers. They don't have to be wordy. They don't have to even be different every time. To be honest, some of them, the best prayers are the simplest prayers, the ones that are repeated most often. So maybe that's your starting point.
We want to encourage you to continue to pursue each other and pursue an amazing relationship, an amazing marriage. And we'd encourage you to continue to invest regardless of where you find your marriage at today, how long you've been married for. And so we've got two practical ways that you can do this. The first one is a real talk session on marriage and relationships. It's happening next Sunday, straight after the service. We've got Mike and Amber Moore who are going to come up soon, and they're going to speak about that. And this is a great next step next Sunday to gain some fresh ideas to keep the spark alive. It's so helpful and so healthy to hear from different people about what they do in their marriage, because what we do, it may not make a lot of sense to you, but what another couple does, for you it might be like, oh, we're more like them, we like what they do, that makes sense to us. And so you want to find your way to keep that spark alive. And so next Sunday, that's going to be really great. And they're going to let you know how you can sign up for that. Secondly, we would love for you to consider joining our online Alpha Marriage course. It goes from 7 weeks and it starts on the 8th of August. It's like a date night and a marriage course rolled into one, and you get to do it from home. It's a great way to learn more about your spouse and gain some tools. We did this marriage course when we were only married a couple of years, and some of those tools that we gained, we still use today. And it's something that you want to be doing often to be able to invest into your marriage. So if you want to find out about that marriage course, then come over to the welcome stand. It's just over to the right, and you can sign up for that. It's so worth your time and energy to invest into this beautiful relationship that God has placed you in. Yeah. Hey, well, we've come to the end of our time together. Why don't we stand together? You know, I recognize that for some people, this has been really useful. Grabbing some tools to put into your toolbox so that it can help strengthen your marriage. I recognize that for some people, this is far from relevant for where you're at right now. But there's one thing that I do know, is that God pursues you. He chases after you. He wants every relationship in your life to bring life to you. He wants every relationship that you have in your world to go from strength to strength. And so we thought at the end of the service, why don't we take some time to lean into God, to pursue God? There's something beautiful that I love to do when I'm in an environment like this. I think, well, God, if you're in this place, then I want to lean in and pursue you. And I have some questions for you. I love to ask questions of God. What can I do in my marriage to strengthen it? What have you put inside Chris that I have never seen before, but you want me to see? How do you want to use our relationship to bless others? This other relationship that I have in my life, how can we go from strength to strength? Or perhaps it's a relationship that you're struggling with. Lean into God. Ask God about that relationship. So as we sing this song together, why don't you take a moment to thank God for the relationships that you've got in your life? Be grateful, and as you lean in and as you share that sense of gratitude with God, lean in and hear what it is that He has to say about that person. As we are grateful for the people in our world, the special, significant people, something amazing happens. Our attitude can change. We start to see the God in them, and it changes us. It can take a relationship that is struggling to something beautiful. So why don't you take this moment, pursue God, talk to Him about whatever's come up for you in this time. He is there waiting to connect with you. So let's sing together. Let's sing.